So recently I ran into the most typical corporate slide, and unfortunately it misses the point a little bit. Now the good thing is it has huge potential for improvement, so that's what we're going to do in this video. So recently I was going through the quarterly results presentation from Johnson & Johnson and came across this slide, which is supposed to be their capital allocation strategy. A numbers and content heavy slide, but still very important. And instead of being inspiring, it sort of blended in with all the other slides around it and ended up being a little bit forgettable. And that's not what we want to achieve in our presentations. And it all happened because of a few simple principles that you can follow. And if a company of this size can make these mistakes, well, the chances are very high that you'll make them as well. So in this video, I'm going to turn this around and look at the 4 mistakes that they made in this slide and how we can do it better. And if you're wondering why you should listen to me on this, well, I make presentations all year round for companies all around the world, and I train their people on their slide master, their templates, their pitch decks, and just presenting in general. So let's get to it and start with the 4 principles that they ignored that could have made their slide better. And the first problem is having no brand consistency. If we were to take away the logo on this slide, it will be very hard to tell which company or which sort of company it belongs to. You can look at the content, but of course we want to have the broader idea, the broader visual consistency in our deck. And that is something which is missing a little bit here, because we have a lot of blue, we have some highlights in red. I mean, the contrast is nice, it stands out, but it doesn't scream the brand's name. And that is what we want to achieve. We want to have that red in this case being more present so that it really communicates that brand. And brand, of course, is the silent ambassador, because if we were to take away the logos on this slide, this would sort of feel flat and you wouldn't be able to tell which sort of brand or which company it belongs to. Now, of course, we want to use that red from their logo. We want to use that more present in their slides. So that is something we're going to work on. Now, secondly, the visual hierarchy is a little bit unclear. This slide in general, it has multiple focus points. So you can see on the left, we have that sort of diagram build, and on the right, we have the numbers heavy content. Now, it's very hard to sort of distinguish everything apart, and the capital allocation, then we have these different boxes below it, then we have that line at the bottom. We're not really sure where to focus our attention to, and it doesn't really guide our eye in a clear view. Also on the right, we see a lot of table structures, but again there, I think we can do more with setting up some boundaries to create it in a nice way and to sort of group everything together that belongs together. And I agree that there's quite a lot of content on this slide, but I especially don't want to step away from that, since it's very realistic in the corporate world to have these sort of slides with that amount of content. But I want to show you some techniques on how you can still use that much content and present it in a nice way. Hey, real quick, if you want to understand these principles in more detail, I have a program that teaches you all the fundamentals you need to know to become an expert slide designer and really spot these differences yourself. So if you're interested in that, you can find all of the information in the description below. Let's get back to the video. And then number 3, we see a lot of spacing and alignment issues. We can see that on the left side, there's quite a lot of space left, while in between everything's sort of squished together. Because we don't have these clear boundaries around the content and not really sure what belongs together, it's sort of hard to see what belongs together, and everything sort of blends in one another, which makes it confusing for the audience to look at. So that is also something which we're going to work on, having clear alignment, having clear structure and proximity in our works. And then as a 4th point, we don't want to have it feel like it's a PowerPoint. And that is something, if you see this slide, you can instantly tell it's a PowerPoint presentation. Now, we don't have to do that. We can still work with these standard shapes in PowerPoint, but we can still make it feel a little bit more nice and a little bit more design to it. And that will just make everything feel so much more integrated and nice to look at. So now that we sort of know the focus points on what we should pay attention to, let's have a look at the redesign and how we can sort of improve this design. And for that, I think it's best that we start from a blank slide. And the first thing we want to add is we want to add our title. Now I'm going to add that branding color, that red in the title already. We're not going to stick with that black and that blue. We're really going to start with that white background, which is one of their colors, and then add that red to it. Now next, we're going to add that rest of the diagram to it, but we're going to use some visual hierarchy. So capital allocation, we see it's the main point, and then we have the 2 subpoints like the organic growth, free cash flow, and then the subdomains like investments, dividends, etc. Now the way we do this is we make the boxes slightly smaller each time to sort of diminish the impact that it has. Now on top we have the most important parts and also the larger fonts. We can see that we clearly make everything into one block, so that already gives us that structure in the slide, and for that alignment that will help quite a lot. Now to add at least a little bit of visuals to it, I'm going to add some icons to that slide as well to sort of represent that organic growth and that free cash flow. This already grabs the attention of the audience a little bit and focuses it to those points. Now something that a lot of people might have missed is that we also had this arrow on the left side, that priority, high priority towards low priority. So we're going to do that with a nicer design arrow in PowerPoint and also give give some gradient to it. So that high priority is on the top and the low priority is sort of fades away, and also the content gets smaller towards that side. So this already gives us some structure on the left side to work with, but now let's have a look at that content on the right side. So for this, we're going to work with some clear boundaries. So I'm going to use some rounded rectangles with a thin line in that boundary, in that color, with some shadow to it to really connect everything together. And then we're going to put the right things in bold so they really stand out, and also use that color element again from the branding to make it stand out more. And once that we have this, it's very easy for us to sort of duplicate that part and create the highlights with the numbers on the red side in the bottom so that they really stand out and get the attention they deserve. Now also for the fonts and the colors, I want to make them larger, I want to make them bold, and I want to make them red with the sub fonts or like the regular text below it to give some more clarification to it. So if we now look at the points that we've discussed, we now have that branding more on point. If this sort of fits in that deck and the other slides are also built in this way, it gives more consistent branding to your slides. And even if you take away the logo and you sort of know the company that you're working with or the industry, you would be able to guess what it is about. So that is important that our silent ambassador, our branding is in place in the icons, in text, in the highlights, etc. Now next, I think we also worked on that visual hierarchy, both on the left side in the diagram as well on the right side, to create some clear borders, to create some clear boundaries and proximity with that. And even if we have a lot of content, we can still work our way with the animations to clearly have it pop up at the right time, so it really helps the audience to navigate their attention. And then we also solved the spacing issues, and for that we've worked with like enough of a heavy elements like the priority arrow on the left that fills up that gap nicely. And because it's not a very thin arrow, it sort of fills up that space. And we also have equal space in between the diagram and the boxes, and also in between the boxes itself we have like clear spacing, everything is nicely aligned. Also on top we have the title and those boxes, those really align nicely, as well as at the bottom. And then overall, I think we also stepped away from that PowerPoint look and feel, which is important. We used more design elements to it while still working and making this entirely in PowerPoint. So this was my redesign of the Johnson & Johnson slide. I think if we put them next to each other, I think we've made a little bit of an improvement, and we made it sort of look nicer and feel more on brand while still staying with that or using that large amount of content in the slide. So we want it to be realistic as well. So thanks a lot for watching. I hope you liked this. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And if you want to learn more about these topics, don't forget to watch the video on screen right now.